Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with another Inside the Scope edition, and today I'll be covering Plies, baby. Now, has one of the best accents in rap history. Now, people talk about Glorilla's accent, but Plies had that Florida accent. You have to love a Florida accent. It's just country, but it has some. I don't know how can you classify, it, but it's certain words that they use. And Plies was no different in that aspect. Now, he said words like bike, which is back. Uh, just different words he used that was different, and it was funny when he said it, but he was serious about it. But just his diction and his slang was just different. A lot of Florida rappers rap like that. Well, some of them do, but you have a rapper like Rick Ross that really doesn't have that accent. I don't know. Originally, I guess he was born in Mississippi. I'm not sure how long he was in Miami, but he didn't have that accent. But nevertheless, uh, Plies is one of the top rappers coming out of Florida. I can't put him behind a Rick Ross or a Trick Daddy or a Trina. He's definitely in that top five. What he was able to do from those first three albums alone put him in that top realm. There's not a lot of Florida rappers that come off the scene. There's a lot of new rappers that's coming out, like a Triple X Tentacion, rest in peace, or YNW Melly. But their rap is different. It's not pure hip hop. It's more of a poppy rock star type thing. But those pure rappers that came out in the early '90s out of Florida, which Plies came a lot later. But like I talked about, all his albums he put out, the first three albums or four albums, I believe, went gold. But that he started off with the Shawty with T-Pain song, which is a classic Plies hit record. T-Pain back then was making every song hot, and if you had a song from T-Pain, you were guaranteed to get a platinum song because he had all these number one hits. I want to say he had 12 or 15 hits in 1 year of singles. So this just showed the power of what T-Pain was able to do. But Plies cemented himself as a force on that solo album, debut album that he had, The Real Testament, which he told these genuine stories, and I always talk about personas in hip hop of what the rapper's persona is, because back in the days, all the way back to Biggie and Jay-Z, the mafioso boss type style, every rapper has a story that they're trying to tell, and Plies' story is just being a realist and being an honorable person in his own words. Because all his titles had, the Real Testament, the realist. He had, everything he talked about was being a realist, and all of his albums, his first three albums, didn't even have any rap features. It had R&B features. You had the T-Pains, you had the Neos. He had these different songs. Like, only thing that he really needed was a singer on the hook, and he would take care of the rest. He's not like most of these artists that need a bunch of features to make the song hot, to get the album looks and the album views and buys. He didn't have to do that. He just told his story and was genuine. And it's similar to when I talked about Sexy Red. He became his genuine self and just rapping about what he knew and rapping about the stories that he's seen. He was a great storyteller as well, a very underrated storyteller. I'm not sure if these stories were true, but the stories, the way he told them, even if they weren't true, they inspired you to live your life a certain way. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But um, he was very relatable. He wasn't really lyrical or controversial, but like I talked about earlier, he was very, very real and very honest about his assessment of things about life in the streets and how those things conflict sometimes. But he didn't just make songs for the dudes; he made songs for the women as well. "Busted Baby Part 2" might be his best song, with featuring Neo. A very great hook. His rapping complemented the singing on that song. So, and he had the song with T-Pain with Shawty. So a lot of his songs were made for women. Some of his greatest songs. Now later on, of course, he made like "Ran Off on a Plug Twice," which is made for the fellas, but for the most part, his genre was a rapper with an R&B mindset. Now, back in 2007, 2006 to 2008 was his most consistent time. Now, he dropped his solo project, I want to say in 2007, but in 2008, he got very active. That's when he dropped two albums in the same year. Now, he was able to drop those albums, and both of those albums went gold. So he was very successful and very productive. Last time I had seen that done was Well, Future's done it recently, but back then DMX had done it in '98 when he dropped 2 solo projects as well in the same year. But that first album, The Realest, my favorite songs in there was One Day and Running My Mama Crazy, because he talked about the street life and what it cost him, especially on Running My Mom Crazy, because he's talking about how he was running the streets when he was younger and his mom always worried. Every time she heard an ambulance, she would think about if it's him, or if he was in jail or something like that. And, cell phones really wasn't prevalent back then. So you only saw people when they called from a landline or when they got home. So you didn't really have that much access to people as you do now. So it was very difficult to keep track of people. But he talked about his aspect and what he did as mom, very honest assessment of what he did and the regrets he had. And of course, One Day, when he talked about um, his friends that died, if they can go back and see their children at daycare and just see how people are living and how people changed on them. Very passionate song, very emotional, provoking song. And Plies definitely provoked a lot of emotion with his music, um, from his signature style. But he didn't always glamorize the streets. He always talked about what you can lose from it, as well as evidence from those previous 2 songs that I talked about. But um, he he portrayed an image of looking in the streets, but he was a poet at heart, I believe. Just being able to paint a picture for people of what the streets did and what the streets could do to you, not just glamorizing them and just talking about what he did, but being able to show both sides of the coin and people make the decisions for themselves of how they feel about it. But one of his favorite songs that I had that he put out for me is "I Just Want the Paper," which was a song that had a Biggie sample on it, and it was off a mixtape. But he talked about he was going to be the first person to make a meal and keep his hood respect, so he wasn't going to sell out. He was going to stay him, and I believe he still maintained that, because even to this day, he's not as popular as he once was. But I never felt like he made songs that put him in a different light. Even the songs, the R&B commercial hits that he had to make for radio, I think he still remained his true self. Never went too far left. Always trying to stay in his pocket, and was very successful doing so. Now, as of late, he hasn't been commercially successful, because I talk about this a lot. A lot of hip hop fans are fickle and they don't really follow artists, but he still make this. It still makes the same type of music for the most part. He's not trying to catch a moment or trying to go viral, even though he's a very active on social media. But he's definitely one of the best hip hop artists in 2008. From that 2006 to 2000, probably 10 era, he was. But Ran Off on the Plug Twice was definitely one of his biggest hits recently. But the best song he probably put out was the They Know remix with Shawty Low. Rest in peace to Shawty Low. Uh, Man, if you haven't heard that verse, definitely go check it out. It was definitely one of his best works, and I think it's his best verse that he put together. And it wasn't his typical bag of, talking and being introspective. This was more of um, just being a showman and being an entertainer. And he was definitely able showing that on that They Know remix. So kudos to Plies, and if you haven't heard Plies' music, do yourself a service and do so. And until next time, I'll see you next time.